Okay, sorry about that, guys. Take two. I didn't verify my audio, and then I stopped the video. Then I was like, wait, my audio's fine. So I'm coming at you with a stack of paper, not because I'm trying to get through all this in a single video, but because I recognize my videos need more structure or I ramble for an hour long. So I'm going to try not to ramble as long. I want to keep these videos really short and sweet. And so, what I want to talk about first is Christian oppression. Now, it doesn't sound like oppression because when you grow, when you're, if you're a person who's just living your life and you decide to step into a church, it can initially feel like a place of a lot of positivity where everybody is really nice and people are generally there to help you and they have your best interest in heart, and so from coming from that perspective of things, that's not a very accurate perspective as to what the majority of Christians would experience. What I would say is growing up in Christianity is much more likely than a person coming off of the street and finding Christianity. And so we're taking the perspective today of growing up in Christianity and just looking at the oppression there. Okay. So first of all, the the things that are classified as sinful, the things that are classified, the shaming around those things, right? Um, they're things that, you know, when we look at it, let's take homosexuality, for example. If you are a person who was born homosexual, uh, then you know that you were born that way, right? If you are a person who is just naturally attracted to the opposite sex, you know that you were born that way, and that is just your natural attraction type, right? There's not anything that you're stepping out of, right? A lot of churches, and maybe not these larger churches, because I know in general Christianity as a whole is more accepting of homosexuality, even though clearly in the Bible it labels it as an abomination to God, or as one of the things that's an abomination to God. And so this is the reason why Christianity has such a strong stance against it. And there's a bunch of drama with Chick-fil-A and all sorts of stuff. It's really crazy how dramatic the United States is getting. But um, here's one thing to note, okay? And this is just the reality of everything, right? Um, you were born with this, right? This is not. It's not an ailment, right? It's not a sickness. It's not something that you need to change. If you are a person who's a homosexual and you're watching this video, and you're kind of feeling that, I'm sorry that you experienced all the things that you experienced, especially if you went through all of the rejection and all of the suppression and feeling like there was this demon inside of you, feeling like there was something wrong with you, feeling like you were constantly battling this sinful nature that you were born with. The reality is that you are beautifully and wonderfully made, right? How can God create, the idea that a perfect God can create imperfection? How does that make any sense, right? And so if God created you, which obviously if you look at the science of if you look at the biochemistry of how pregnancy happens, it is very much a magical thing. And it's very much something that is divinely orchestrated. It doesn't happen just randomly. In a way it does, but also when you see how complicated things are, it's very obvious that there's hands at play, right? And so, you know, this idea that you were born with these things that you're fighting, and you are the problem, and that God doesn't want you to be this way, but he made you this way, but he doesn't want you to be this way. Like a lot of these things just don't make sense, right? And it's okay for it to not make sense. It's not to say that it's not to say that you're wrong. You're wrong for feeling these desires. I think I heard, don't quote me on this, but I think I heard one time from a Catholic person that the way that the Catholic Church defined it was, if you were attracted to I'm not Catholic. If you're attracted to the opposite sex, then God has, given you the divine ordination uh, of procreating and creating, and creating more Christians, right? But if you are homosexual and you're attracted to the same sex, then that was God's calling for you to go into solitude and to go into divine service, and into, oh, what's the word, where you just don't have sex ever, the thingy, celibacy, right? And so let's look at that, right? So then we've created a system of oppression, of oppressing natural desires. And the reason why I say natural desires is because God's nature exhibits homosexuality. If you look at nature, not all of nature is monogamous. I'm sorry. I mean, there's God created parrots in trees where the female parrot stays inside of her nest, built by 7 to 10 different male parrots, and all those male parrots come and you know basically that parrot's life cycle is that she has 8 to 10 other male parrots consistently taking care of her, in all of her needs, right? And we see all of these different natural things, and we try to separate ourselves by saying, no, we're human beings. We're divinely different from all the animals here on the planet. And although, yes, you can't argue that we are very different from the animals here on the planet, at the same part of it, we're not separate from it, right? We're born of the earth. The carbon atoms that are in your skin and in your bones and in your muscles came from the carbon that you consumed from the plants and from the animals that are grown from the earth. Your being is made from this earth, right? And so, yes, we are all divinely connected to God, but at the same time, we are a part of this natural planet, and it's a beautiful thing, obviously, right? Unless you live in like a big, chaotic, crazy city, then maybe it's tough to see the beauty in it. But it is a beautiful thing if you get out of the city. but but no, so you create this system where you have all of these. A perfect example is, we'll call out the Catholics just a little bit here, but when you have a lot of these men who are being sexually suppressed, and you force them into these positions where they are not allowed to express themselves. But then you make them leaders in the church and you have them in charge of kids' programs. You're asking for it, right? You're taking this human being that is a natural part of the earth, this natural creature that has sexual desires that are natural sexual desires, and you're oppressing him and oppressing his sexuality and oppressing his expression. And you're trying to make his body fit into a framework that it doesn't want to fit in. But it's not that it's a sinful desire, it's a framework that the creator has created for this specific person. And so, how can a God be all just and fair and loving and kind if he is going to create this person who's attracted to the same sex but has just as high of a desire as any other being, right? Um, and so then we see what happens with the Catholic Church, right? And these things get out and they're hushed by the church, and they get out and they're hushed by the church. In my experience of life growing up, I was also sexually oppressed. I wouldn't say so much sexually, but I would certainly say just in the dating sense. The church that I went to was really just not fond of dating before you were 18. Well, as you know, when you hit about 10 to 12 years old, in the Bible's eyes, you are a man, and in nature's eyes, you are ready to procreate. And so, even though the 21st century has decided that we're going to put all these rules that now you have to be 18 and now you have to be 21 and all sorts of these crazy rules, your body is mature and ready to procreate at 12 years old and 13 years old, right? And so, you get this situation where now in the American society, at least, you are forcing that child to repress themselves sexually and naturally until they're the age of 18, right? And okay, so that's the legal system here, so that's fine. But, then you end up with these kids who, they want to have a girlfriend where they're 13 or 14. No, you can't have that because you're too young. Well, not according to the Bible, to the United States. Sure, you're too young, but according to the Bible, it's, perfectly reasonable. And I know not all churches take this stance and not all families take this stance. I'm talking to a very, very few minute backwoods kind of Bible thumping Christian churches that teach that, if like where I grew up, there was basically no dating allowed in the church, and you were not allowed to show any sort of interest in the opposite sex. And you could talk to them, you could, have fun and all that kind of stuff, but you were never allowed to touch the opposite sex. You were never allowed to hold hands with the opposite sex. You were never allowed to kiss. My church would openly shame kids, teenagers, for getting caught holding hands, getting caught kissing each other, right? I mean, in my church, they would openly shame people for homosexual stuff, for all sorts of stuff. It was just a really crappy church that I had gone to, oh, that I grew up in. And so because of that, by the time I hit 18, not only did I not know how anything worked, but I also didn't even know how to interact with the opposite sex. Even though I was very much attracted to him, I really didn't know how to interact because I wasn't allowed to interact with the opposite sex. And so it just created this really weird tension for me. And I'm straight growing up in the Christian church, and so I couldn't imagine being homosexual, even though, my sister was homosexual, and another one of the people who grew up in the church was also homosexual. But here's the reality. We're not going to turn this into an hour-long video. Here's the reality: is that you were created this way, right? And thus, if you were created this way, how could you be damned for expressing the way that you were created? Right? Why would God damn you to a place of fire and brimstone, to a place where all of the liars go, where all of the haters go, where all of the people who do heinous things go, uh, for something that you were naturally created to desire, right? And the truth of the matter is just it's just not the case, right? As I've said many times, God is this beautiful spring in the desert that is open to everybody. And any attempt to restrict access to it is just a human thing to do. We see something that's free and we want to control it and we want to make other people pay so that they can have it, even though it's free, right? I mean, from the water we drink to the air we breathe, it's a very natural thing for humans to want to control and to want to control you with fear. And so, if you are a person who's homosexual or anything like that, and you understand that oppression, the oppression of expressing yourself, the oppression of doing the hobbies that you wanted to do, of being the person that you wanted to be. If you ever felt that oppression, I'm sorry, but at the same time, do know that this is not God that is creating this hurt. It's merely the churches that are creating this hurt. In which case, there's a flavor for everything, right? So if you decide that you go to a church and you don't like that type of church, then I highly recommend that you go to a different church. and or you can go to one of the unity churches. I love the unity churches. They're always open and willing for everyone to come, and I really do love that. So okay, I'm going to go ahead and end the video here. I just wanted to make sure that that we kind of touched on the oppression side of things and the oppression in Christianity. And it's nothing that's wrong with you, and it's also nothing that's going to get you damned into hell. You know, the truth is that the Creator created you to be exactly what He wanted you to be, all the flaws and everything, right? Now, if you lose your way and you accidentally end up going onto this really intense egoic path where you're just, you're just living for the world, that very much is still a thing, right? You have people who are just living for the world, but that's a topic for another day. And so basically, to end this video, basically it is just, you know, the repression of your desires is not something that you should hate God for, right? It's not something that you should look at Christ, you should look at God, you should look at the Creator and say, why did you give me this affliction? It's not an affliction. People are trying to convince you that it's an affliction. It's not an affliction. It's who you are, and it's okay to express that. So okay, I hope you guys enjoyed the video today. I will see you on the next video and on the next topic. So, cheers. Bye. Oh, also, like, subscribe, do all that whole thing, the whole thing. If you have a topic that you want me to cover, put it down in the comments because uh, I typically run out of things to talk about. So, okay, now I'm done.